Linum Labs. A quick introduction on our company. Linum Labs is a software development studio that builds blockchain solutions focused on healthcare and identity. You can read a little bit more on what we do on our website. I'll pop it into the chat box, but it's linumlabs.com. And then firstly, we're excited to have two incredible speakers on our call this evening, who I will hand over to introduce themselves. Ricki is one of them. Whoa. A lot of feedback. That sounds better. So just quickly, excited for our two speakers this evening. I'll hand over to them to introduce themselves in a few minutes. But a warm welcome to all of you joining us for this call this evening. It's good to have you in the house. Feel free to ask any questions you may have. The premise of this call is really to have an interactive, engaging conversation. So all questions are welcome. You can add those questions as we have for intros in the chat box as well. Lastly, as you may see, this call is recorded, and that is for our broader community to have access to the discussion after we've signed off. I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Abe Cambridge, who is the CEO at the Sun Exchange. Abe, the floor is yours.
Cool, so I'm going to share my screen. Here we are. Okay, let me know when anyone can see what's going on. Okay, can anyone hear me? Can you get a thumbs up from Nicole? Perfect. Hi everyone, I'm Abe. I'm the founder and CEO of Sun Exchange. For those of you who have not heard of Sun Exchange is a platform where people can earn monetized sunshine. We are streaming monetized African sunshine around the world in cryptocurrency, solar powering the planet, one solar cell at a time. We enable customers to own solar panels located here in South Africa, powering businesses, industries, schools, and earning income from it paid in Bitcoin. But that's the summary. My background is in solar energy. I've been in the solar industry for 10 years, but I've also, in that same time period, been following the rise of cryptocurrency. I actually see solar energy and cryptocurrency as very much equivalents in their own respective industries, being energy and money. They're both decentralized. Energy is to the world of solar power is to the world of energy, what cryptocurrency is to the world of money, but we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. Just like to start my presentation just by planting this seed of thought. The Earth is like a spaceship that didn't come with an operating manual. So here we are floating out in space on planet ship Earth. We don't know how it works really. We're trying to make it work. We're trying to build a system that is good for everyone and is actually going to keep this show on the road for as long as possible. But we know that some of the systems that we've built are actually not fit for purpose anymore. They don't serve us really very well. And let's try and build some new ones, which makes everyone happier. So let's look at one system that's come into play since 2009. So cryptocurrency, as I'm sure most of you are aware, started with the Bitcoin blockchain January 3rd, 2009. And the UK, in the Genesis block, the first ever block ever laid down on a blockchain, on the Bitcoin blockchain, had an encoded message in it, which was an excerpt from the Times on January the 3rd, 2009, which is around Alistair Darling, who was the Chancellor of the Exchequer, an important money man in the UK, had just basically approved a second round of bailouts for banks, basically forcing poverty onto future generations, basically giving free money to banks that had lost money doing silly things with it and devaluing our currency as a result. And this is something that was going on all around the world. And basically the populations are powerless to prevent government from using our money to bail out mistakes of financial institutions. So that was actually what triggered the first Bitcoin transaction. It's really a statement, a reminder of this digital monument about why this technology has been created to create a fairer, more decentralized, more equitable and healthy financial ecosystem that the world can use. And then let's actually look at the balance sheet of the Fed. Actually, the actual amount of quantitative eased money since the start of the financial collapse is approaching $5 trillion, and that's just the US government has basically been given to banks to make up for their mistakes. And here we are. I can even show you a graph. So $4.5 trillion right now in approximately 2019 has been printed and given away for free to banks. And if we just compare that to the costs of that to other things in the world. So, looking at the kind of global financial crisis, 15 trillion, what you could have done with $15 trillion. Basically, you could look at some of the comparisons here on this lovely diagram. You could have, it's more equivalent to it's larger than the China GDP, 15 times larger than the stock of Apple. And it also would be just less than what we would need if we were going to meet the climate change targets under the Paris Accord by 2030. So for the same amount of money given to bail out banks, we could have actually fixed the climate change crisis with the same amount of money. So it kind of just shows you just what kind of a disturbed system that we're actually still operating in. And then we have the oil price. Obviously, as the dollar devalues, as more money is printed, the cost of oil, fossil fuels, is going to increase. It's obvious. Yes, it's fairly volatile, and as the world's economy goes on ups and its downs, the oil price responds. But generally, it doesn't take an expert to know that as one commodity becomes more scarce, it's going to increase in value. So the more we use oil, the more we rely on oil, the more expensive oil is going to become. And that, especially when you do that with oil consumption. So oil consumption since the beginning of the Victorian period just keep going up and up and up because it's how our economy is based. And that ultimately leads to energy poverty, because if you have value that is decreasing in value and fossil fuels that we rely on for energy systems becoming more expensive, you get energy poverty. So this map in the background here shows you the regions of the Earth that is in the most energy poverty stricken places on Earth. And obviously Africa, front and center, energy is a severe issue to sustainable development. Obviously, where people don't have access to energy, deforestation increases, people are burning kerosene and other forms of fuels which are very harmful to the environment and to human health. So getting clean energy access across the world is actually a #1 sustainable development directive, and is not being helped by oil prices going up and money value going down. And this picture here is a show of how desperate the fossil fuel industry now is to extract the last bits of oil from our planet. We're now going to the extent of tar sands and shale oil, literally desecrating vast areas of land, especially in the Alberta tar sands in Canada. Areas the size of England each year are being destroyed and turned toxic in pursuit of the last remnants of fossil fuels that the fossil fuel industry can get their hands on. And this image here shows the before and after of one particular area of Alberta. So what was green, lush, lots of water, animals, sports, wildlife, is basically turned into a decimated, toxic wasteland because of the pursuit for tar oil. And of course, burning tar sands and other oil increases concentrations of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. My master's degree, my background my academic background is in climate change science. I've got a master's degree in climate change science. So don't believe the tabloid newspapers that are just trying to attract headlines by saying that climate change is a myth or that it's been going on for years. Climate change has been going on since the planet was first formed. What we are doing now is performing an uncontrolled experiment by inducing climate change, of which we don't know what the outcome is going to be. But we're starting to see the outcomes already. And this map here shows the areas of the world which are most sensitive to climate change. Again, Africa, front and center, is the most vulnerable place on Earth to the impacts of climate change, which basically means crop failure, droughts, increased storms, you name it. Every kind of ecosystem on Earth is being affected negatively by climate change. This image here shows an ice shelf which has just broken off of Antarctica. It's called the Larsen C ice shelf. It's hundreds of kilometers in volume. It's larger than the state of Delaware. I think it's like 17,000 trillion cubic meters of ice is now floating into the Arctic. It's not much larger than the UK. This crack formed a couple of years ago. It was spreading about 10 meters a day, and that has now broken off. Basically, Antarctica is melting. And it's not just about sea level rise and the heating of our oceans. Carbon dioxide emissions are acidifying our oceans, which is killing off coral reefs. This image here shows the top of the Great Barrier Reef of Australia, showing that approximately 81% of the northern part of the Great Barrier Reef is now severely bleached. And by bleached, we mean it's dead. And the coral reefs are our nurseries for fisheries. So any country that relies on fishing are going to find fish stocks that become depleted rapidly as a result of climate change. So it's not just global warming. Global warming is an element of climate change. Climate change impacts are already being observed around the world. There's a picture of bleached coral reefs. Note the absence of Nemo in that photo. Okay, so here's some good news then. So the energy flippening is happening. That's right, solar power is here and it's not going anywhere. The price of solar energy is now cheaper than fossil fuels, which basically means we can now produce electricity directly from the sun at a cheaper price than we can do so from burning oil and gas, which is tremendous news for Africa, where we're building energy systems and we can now do so cheaper than the fossil fuel industry. What an amazing monumental breakthrough we have just achieved as a civilization through this incredible technology. It's all driven down by the reduction in solar cell prices. We're now down to, actually, this is very old data, this end of 2015. The actual solar cell prices are now approximately 20 times lower than when I first started in the solar industry in 2010. Solar cells are literally as cheap as chips. The efficiencies haven't really improved in solar technology, but what has improved is the efficiency in manufacturing them. And that's what's really creating exponential growth of the solar market. So you've probably seen solar houses with solar panels on. That's probably how it started in Germany, solar powering houses. And then we can then solar power deserts, such as these pictures out of South Africa in the Northern Cape. And now you can fill up whole lakes with them. What I love about solar is you can see that the shape of those solar farms there actually look like solar energy cells, which shows how kind of fractal solar energy is. It's very, very modular. It can be pieced together bit by bit by bit with practically no environmental impact whatsoever. The silent, solid state don't do anyone any harm. And guess what? Here's another map of Africa. But this time it's positive news. So Africa is the sunniest continent on Earth. It's got by far the most solar radiation hitting it than any other continent. It's the only continent that straddles both hemispheres. In fact, South Africa and Namibia have got the highest concentrations of sunlight on the planet. This is great news, producing solar electricity. And on the another image, the African continent is obviously the least electrified. To electrify Africa is going to require at least $38 billion a year, more than is already committed to be investing into energy infrastructure. And there are 650 million people without any electricity access at all. So that's a huge market. This is a tremendous opportunity to solar power a whole continent and skip the process of centralized fossil fuel production. So what has this actually got to do with cryptocurrency and blockchain? Well, you've probably seen this image before, and this is, if you've been to any crypto conference, you're probably familiar with this diagram, the shift from centralization to distributed and decentralized. Obviously, with a centralized financial system like we've just discussed, a central bank can print money and send it out. A central decision maker can impact every node on that network. Obviously, with a decentralized or a distributed network, if you remove one node or one part of it, it doesn't impact the rest of the network. Also means it's far more efficient to deploy a large grid in a smaller and then connect the nodes up. And that's really what can happen both with solar energy systems, because rather than building a centralized thermal nuclear power station or a coal power station, you can now build smaller solar power plants and then connect them together afterwards. And that's what's happening. Bitcoin blockchain technology is incredible. I just want to point out actually what's going on when you merge these two technologies. Obviously, that you are blockchain people, so I'm really not going to go into the intricacies of it, but you know that a blockchain, a cryptocurrency, is basically a blockchain is a record of information that's distributed and immutable across lots of computers, and the people processing that data are being rewarded with a cryptocurrency, or they're doing computational processing and they're being rewarded for the work done, being paid out in cryptocurrencies. So really, it's silicon chips producing money. So therefore, the questions that we can ask is, what happens when you use the money that's been created on a silicon chip that's powered by electricity to finance a silicon chip that produces electricity that then can be sold for more cryptocurrency. It actually creates a positive feedback loop. It's a solid state, it's a completely silicon-based economic paradigm that we're now entering into by just switching off fossil fuel generation and moving to solar and cryptocurrency, because the two worlds are very much combined. And of course, I mean, the elephant in the room, as people often raise, is that Bitcoin mining is very energy intensive. It is hugely energy intensive. The amount of energy that the Bitcoin blockchain requires to run is the equivalent of the island of Manhattan. If anyone's been to Manhattan, it's quite an electric. It uses quite a lot. It's got a large electricity bill, put it that way. But then you've got to think about what the value of the cryptocurrencies that are being created in these systems is actually worth and what you can do with it. So the amount of solar panels that you can finance off one Bitcoin is about 6 kilowatts of solar panels built and operating. And the amount of energy that those solar panels then go on to produce is about 400 megawatt hours. But the energy used to create that Bitcoin in the first place is just over 100 megawatt hours. So you basically quadrupled, you've got you've quadrupled the amount of energy that you have. You've got a positive energy balance here. You've created more energy from financing that solar panel that didn't exist in the first place by creating that unit of value. And that unit of value has not been destroyed. It's still going to be circulating. So what we're just pointing out here is that even if you were to put a third or a quarter of the Bitcoin supply or cryptocurrency supply into financing solar, you still have more energy than you do to create that Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin still exists. And therefore, let's look at the Bitcoin price itself. Yes, it's continued to increase. We go through these big spikes like at the end of 2017. But ultimately, just by the very nature of what's going on here, you've got a finite supply of money that is being used, but then as the demand increases, that drives the price up. It's simply economics. It's the direct opposite of what's going on with our traditional financial system. So let's look at let's really look at this let's compare this what's going on with the world of money. So you've got now, in this existing economic mode, you've got an infinite supply of money that results in currency devaluation. And then we have a finite supply of energy, fossil fuels that are becoming diminished, and therefore it creates price increases and destroys the environment. So as we are now progressing and evolving as a species and as a civilization, we have now invented finite monetary supply that becomes increasingly valuable over time, which can then be used to finance energy systems, the price of which decreases over time and is of infinite availability. And we have crossed that threshold. We crossed that threshold in 2009. And now people around the world can now own solar assets. So the Sun Exchange is a marketplace where anybody in the world can buy a solar panel and get it leased to commercial projects anywhere in other emerging markets. We focus on emerging markets because in those places, financing solar systems is really hard to do through traditional financing. It requires a modern peer-to-peer financial network in order to finance these projects. So what happens, you would come and buy a solar panel through Sun Exchange, you choose which project it gets leased to, and you'll earn income from it. Do have a quick video of how it works. Oh, there's our logo. So you go to sunexchange.com, you sign up and we'll perform a KYC check. You then choose the solar project you want to own solar panels in. You can place an order, choose how many solar panels you want, and we'll generate a lease rental income estimate of how much money you can earn from leasing those solar panels. People all around the world can buy the solar panels, accept cryptocurrency and credit card. And then once the solar panels have been purchased, they get installed, fully insured, and it's on a 20-year lease agreement. Now, the payouts are all done in Bitcoin, which get paid out into your dashboard, which you can check at any time, check your earnings, get live project data. So you can, wherever in the world, sit back and earn monetized African sunshine paid out to you in crypto, which can be converted back into your local currency, which is using Bitcoin for what it was meant to be used for. Internet of money, global payment, electronic payment system. Payments without borders. And this is all real. I'm going to show you some slides. This was the first project we did. This is the Stellenbosch Waldorf School. This was the world's first cryptocurrency funded solar power plant. It's been operating now for nearly 3 years. It basically covers the whole of the electrical supply of the school during the daytime. Obviously, the school isn't operating at night. We've got a tyre recycling factory in Rustenburg. This is 45 kilowatts running for 2 years. A plastics recycling factory, a whole microgrid. Now, these are the kind of projects which are really cool, is that getting electricity access to really rural areas of Kenya, powering whole villages of households which otherwise would never be able to get access to clean electricity, or in fact any electricity at all, and they now can, because our customer base can now lease solar panels to these communities and get paid out in cryptocurrency. And the owners of solar panels are very happy because solar produces a predictable return. Just on its own sort of fiat-linked lease, you're going to get about 12% average return over the course of the lifespan of the project, and it's getting paid out in cryptocurrency. You can convert it back to your own currency if you want to, which is paying out in crypto, which basically means that many of our customers are earning Bitcoin and they've never used it before. They've never used cryptocurrency. This is a use case of it. People are now learning how this system works and interact with it for the first time through Sun Exchange. So that's how we work. So we're going to end on another quote. I love old Bucky. He's a great dude. So let's just remind ourselves of what he says. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So we're not about taking down, destroying the banks, all of that. Let's just build a new system. We already have. Let's start using it. So stop hodling your crypto, put it to work. Let's solar power Africa. You could sign up today at sunexchange.com. Join our Telegram channel, t.me/sunexchange_official. Or you can reach out to me, abraham.cambridge@sunexchange.com, or you can tweet me at @abcambridge. Thank you very much. That's me done.
Amazing. Thank you, Abe. And we do have some questions for you that we'll answer during the Q&A session. I'm taking notes on who the questions are dedicated for. Before we go on to Ricki and questions, I just want to make sure in terms of comprehension, everybody, if there's any buzzwords or anything that you may have not understood, ask those questions now or throughout the conversation. And yeah, keep popping those questions into the chat box.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I'm gonna put myself on mute now, and then I hand over to Ricki.
Awesome. So thank you, Abe. Over to you, Ricki.
Cool. How's it going, guys? Can everyone hear me then?
Perfectly.
Nicole, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Right, let me pull up my presentation now.
Oh, Abe, I think you're perfect.
Okay, cool. Okay, my computer on loan is a bit slow. There we go, share that. Okay, cool. Can everyone see my presentation then?
Perfectly.
Okay,
unless
great.
you have some content at the bottom. I'm not sure if it's only me, but there seems to be something cut off. But it seems to be fine.
Yeah. Okay, wait, let me just go back one. Sorry. Okay, cool. Right. Everyone see the... Okay, guys, how's it going? My name is Ricki Allardice. I'm from Project Ubu, and I am a project manager here, and I do content creation and kind of everything that needs being doing. Being a startup, that's kind of how it goes. So we're based in Cape Town. Myself, the other head office is in Joburg, but I'm down here. And I've got a MSc also coming from a similar background to Abe, from Stellenbosch University, did a master's degree in science, and did a bit of work in climate change stuff as well. And then moved into biotech, worked in biotech for a few years, and then made the move into finance, where I got really interested in cryptocurrency. And now, happily, I'm with Project Ubu, pursuing my passion, which is working on cryptocurrency projects. So let's just explain, before we get into explaining what Project Ubu is, I think understanding the problem of what we're trying to solve is a bit more pertinent. So basically, the problem is that South African poverty is out of control. I mean, we've got unemployment rate unofficially of close to 50%. And global poverty, although it is getting better, it's still quite a problem. We've got more than 1 billion people living under conditions of extreme poverty. So how do you solve this problem? So one of the kind of things that has been put forward is a universal basic income, otherwise known as a UBI. So what we propose is, we're not a government, so we can't really levy taxes on anyone. So how do we instill a universal basic income? So we need to do that without taxation, which makes it a little bit more difficult because you can't just force people to give you money. You have to have a voluntary system. And then the third problem, which is probably the biggest one, is how do you distribute that income efficiently? So once you've actually collected this income, or you've got it, how do you distribute it to the right people who actually need it? And the case of the universal basic income is that everyone gets it. But once again, you need to make sure that these people do actually get it. And do they get it on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis? How do you do that? So there's quite a lot of technological challenges that are there that we need to overcome. So what is our solution that we propose? So we propose a privately issued UBI that is cryptographically secured. So in other words, it's a cryptocurrency, and it's issued on a blockchain. So yeah, we basically have a blockchain that issues our cryptocurrency tokens to everyone and anyone on Earth who wants to receive them for free. You get them every single day for as long as you live, basically. Right, so what is Ubu? So we've been building our tech for about 2 years, and we launched our commercial offering in Q4, so the end of last year. In about August, we started onboarding citizens. So following that, we're planning on doing our ICO on the 29th of March, followed in South Africa, and then we're going to follow that up with the listing on a decentralized exchange about a month later, which is a global decentralized exchange. So like I said, it's a cryptocurrency that's secured on a blockchain. And what I think is really important to note here is that we've been building for 2 years before ICOing. So in 2017, for those who've been around for a while, you'll remember lots of scams that were flowing around in 2017. Guys pay someone on Fiverr to write a white paper that ICO, and then they run away with everyone's money. So we think it's a better idea to actually build something, put some skin in the game ourselves, build some tech that actually works, build a community, and then launch our ICO. It offers a lot more credibility, specifically when you try to raise funding from investors. So how does Ubu work? Okay, so there's 3 layers you need to think of. So if you start on the bottom right, you'll see there's the Ubu token. So the Ubu token is issued daily within what we call the Ubu sphere, which is just the Ubu app. So that doesn't leave the Ubu sphere, it doesn't leave the Ubu app. It's issued 100 tokens a day to everyone who's got a wallet, and those are only used within the Ubu sphere. What you can do with those tokens is you can buy goods and services from vendors who are also on the platform. Then what you can do with your Ubu token is you can either spend it, or you can convert it into what's called a UBX token, which is a secondary token that we have, which is listed publicly on other cryptocurrency exchanges. So the Ubu token stays within the Ubu sphere, and the UBX token interacts with a bunch of other cryptocurrency exchanges. So then if you look to the top of the pyramid there, you'll see there's fiat. So the UBX token is the interaction between fiat currency and the Ubu token, and that's what kind of gives you a value peg. So you can work out what a Ubu is basically worth. And it allows vendors to cash out their Ubus into fiat and pay their bills in rands or whatever they might have. So this is kind of how we make the ecosystem function, is we've got this intermediary token called the UBX, which interfaces with fiat as well as the Ubu token, and the Ubu token just stays within the Ubu sphere. This will make a little bit more sense as I go through the presentation. Okay, so there's 3 main components to the Ubu sphere. The first one is a citizen. So anyone can be a citizen. It's free to join, and you receive 100 Ubus per day. Now, these Ubus accumulate every day, but they dissipate at a rate of 1% per day. So that's to enforce what's called velocity of money. So you need to either use it or lose it, is kind of the idea. And what you can do with the Ubu is you can buy goods and services from vendors on the platform, or you can transfer them to another Ubu citizen if you want to. So I can send 100 Ubus to Abe, for example. The next one on the far right is the vendor. So once again, it's free to join. And this is where vendors can market the goods and services and sell them in Ubus. So you would think, oh, why would I, as a vendor, sell what I've got on a platform for some token that these guys have created, which essentially is worth nothing right now, because what gives it value? So what we thought of is unlocking what we call moribund assets. So a moribund asset is basically an asset that might have value today, but tomorrow it doesn't have value. So put that into layman's terms, imagine you're a baker, you bake a couple of loaves of bread. At the end of the day, you've got a few loaves left over, and tomorrow they're going to be stale and worth nothing. So you can feed them to the ducks or something. So what do you do with these assets? So you can throw them away, and that's what happens with about a third of the world's food production. Is it ends up in landfill, and no one benefits from that. It's a net loss to everyone. And there's a portion of that loss that you can't really get back because the soil has been degraded that you've grown that food in. So what we look at is saying, okay, those portions of assets that are going to be thrown away, like the bread that's going to be thrown away, let's unlock that with a token where the vendor can now accept these tokens and get some money back, some form of value back for the asset that he was going to throw away anyway. So if you are someone who's in dire financial straits, you get your Ubers on a daily basis. You can then go to an accepting vendor like the baker and say, here's some Ubers, and you can buy it yourself, some bread. And that otherwise the bread would be thrown away. So now you've actually created some value, specifically because the vendor can now take those Ubers and cash them out back into rands if he wants to, or into UBX and sits on them and speculates on future growth in value. The other thing you can offer as a vendor is you can offer discounts. So let's say I'm offering 20% discount to get people into my shop. I say it's 20% discount, but you pay that discount portion in Ubers. So you pay 80% in fiat, and you would normally give that 20% away, but now you can charge for that discount portion in Ubers. So maybe you can offer a bigger discount because that people can pay for Ubers, etc. You know, imagination can run wild there. But it allows vendors to actually monetize the discount that they would have been giving away for free anyway. So it's like a value add for them. And then the third one is things like loyalty points. So there's loyalty programs all over the place. Everyone's got them, and none of them interface with each other. Like your Woolworths card points don't interface with your Smart Shopper points from Pick and Pay. So you've accumulated all these points, and you have to kind of spend them at that same place. Would it not be easier if you had a universal point system that if you built up frequent flyer miles with SAA, well, please don't fly SAA, but if you built up frequent flyer miles with another airline, you can then use those miles to buy yourself a meal at the restaurant, at the airport, or book yourself into a hotel or whatever. But you can't with your frequent flyer miles. So if you had to standardize those, then it'll make life a lot easier. So we see the role of the Uber coming in there as well. This is all conjecture. Right, then let's move over to the third one. And the third one is a node. So a node is basically just a citizen, also free to join, but what he does is he drives citizen recruitment. So these are people with large social networks, and they can drive citizen recruitment, and they earn UBX tokens for their recruitment efforts. So it's like a marketing expense. So if you recruit people, you get paid in UBX tokens, which will have a future value as the network grows. So those are the three main components within the network, and they kind of all work synergistically together. So let's just touch on the economic model again. Right, so as I mentioned earlier, Ubers, you get 100 Ubers per day to every citizen. Anyone can become a citizen. All you need is a cell phone number. 1% of your Ubers issued daily are dissipated back into the treasury, and the amount of Ubers in circulation are a function of how many citizens are in the network. So it's 11,000 Ubers per citizen in the network. So you guys can do the maths on that. But yeah, there's a large amount of Ubers in there, and they're constantly dissipating and decaying and being reissued by our treasury. Okay, the UBX, the secondary token, this is issued for sale at a rate dependent on your citizen count. So there's a fixed supply of them. There's 240 million UBX tokens that will ever be created. And those are minted on a daily basis as new citizens are added to the network. So more and more UBX tokens are available for sale. But there's a fixed supply. Once you're 240 million, no new tokens will be issued. These UBX tokens can be converted, Ubers can be converted into UBX tokens on an auction model. And then the UBX tokens can be converted into fiat or other crypto on external exchanges. So this allows a complete cycle of moving from your Uber token into fiat and back into crypto again if need be. The other cool thing about the UBX token is it pays dividends in Ubers. So those are monthly payouts, and they start at about 75 Ubers per UBX token, and that will increase over time to 475 Uber tokens per UBX. So every month, if you're holding onto UBX tokens, you're going to get dividends paid from those. So now we've built in like an income generating portfolio part that you can use in your UBX. So this is specifically designed as a means for people who are on the UBI to actually improve their lot in life by building like an investment portfolio for them. So you can hang on to redeem your Ubers for UBXs, hang on to your UBXs, get more Ubers, be able to buy more stuff on the platform, etc. Or speculate on the future value of your UBXs and sell them to redeem your capital. So there's a couple of things going on there, but it's very important to understand how the Uber and the UBX interact with each other. Okay, so what are we doing then to empower the decentralized economy? So until this point in time, a large amount of cryptocurrency projects have been quite theoretical, and you have to have been like an ardent crypto supporter to really use them. There's not a lot of utility in many of the projects out there. So what we've done is we've built a network of about 75,000 citizens already in the last 6 months that use our platform, and probably about 99% of them don't realize that this is a blockchain-based project. So we see blockchain as kind of a feature, but it's not the main selling point of what we're doing. It is integral to what we're doing, but it doesn't. People don't have to know that they're actually using a blockchain. It just needs to work. Right. So what are we doing? Well, we're empowering peer-to-peer transactions. So there's no limitations on any Uber transactions. So you can send Ubers to anyone in the world as long as you have their cell phone number. So it makes remittances across borders much easier. You don't have to go through a bank. There's no middleman. And also there's no fees on sending your Uber. Then from a vendor perspective, anyone can become a vendor on our platform. So this empowers entrepreneurs because there's no fees to join as a vendor. So you can just market your goods and services on there. So it's a great way for free publicity because you've got a large amount of people using the app on a daily basis and transacting on the app. So you can actually get FaceTime on the app there. The only barrier to entry is a very basic smartphone. So the barrier is very, very low. So we purposely built it this way. It's a web app. So it's lightweight. It doesn't use a lot of data. So we try to make it as easy as possible for people of limited financial means to actually use it. So then just some key characteristic differences here between the Uber and the UBX token. So the Uber token is not a store of value. This is meant for high velocity transactions. It dissipates, so it's like a use it or lose it thing. And if you want to actually store that value, you can convert it into the UBX token, which is meant to be the store of value token. So the Uber token also only operates within the Uber sphere, whereas the UBX token interacts with the Uber sphere and the outside world, so you can trade it over multiple exchanges, etc. And like I already mentioned, the Uber token dissipates over time, whereas the UBX token actually pays dividends in Ubers over time, which you can then use to buy more goods and services or even buy more UBX tokens if you want to. Okay, so the question we get asked quite a lot is how do we make money? How do we monetize? So very important once at scale. We've got like a 5-year time horizon here. So it's going to take a while to get there, but our plan is eventually to charge vendors to advertise to citizens in the app. So with geotagging, etc. If you're running a special, let's say you're a coffee shop, you can advertise to citizens who are in your immediate area saying, come in and spend your Ubers in our store. And the plan is then we have reached like hyper Uberization, where everyone is using Ubers and it's very widely used in society. So then you can start charging vendors to actually advertise. The second way we monetize is the increase in the value of the Uber over time. Since 10% of Ubers that are issued go back to Uber Core, and those are used to cover costs, so to pay salaries, etc., and make the business self-sustaining for staff members and things like that. And then the third one is there's a portion of UBX that get allocated to Uber Core as well, and as those increase in value over time, it's the same concept as the Uber. But for now, we're just running on investors' money. Okay. So often is the case, what I've seen with a lot of projects in the crypto space is that they just attach a blockchain because of the hype. So blockchains are not good for a lot of things because they're slow, they're energy intensive, but what they really are good for is they're very, very good for checking for shenanigans and removing the need for trust. So for running a monetary system, a blockchain is fantastic because every central bank effectively is prone to political meddling. So if you've got a central bank issuing your money, it's quite easy to capture that central bank, and be it through military force or just be it through political shenanigans, and you can influence monetary policy, and then you end up with quantitative easing and you put the world in debt. So this is a bit of a problem. So what Satoshi's white paper postulates with Bitcoin is that you have an algorithmically run system which issues money at a set rate, and it's got a set of rules, and those rules are unchangeable. So we've got a similar thing. We have a algorithmically programmed smart contract that releases Ubu tokens on a daily basis according to how many users there are, and the same with UBX tokens. So the rules are set, there's no changing them, and then you at least have monetary stability in terms of planning for how the money is going to be issued. So that's why we use a blockchain specifically, because we are effectively building a financial system here. Okay, and then what is Uber doing to bring stakeholders together? So this whole system only works if we bring the three key stakeholders together. So the first one is the investor or the speculator. And he interacts by being the early adopter, putting in capital and buying UBX tokens. And that drives value down into the realm of the citizen and into the Ubu. And the citizen interacts with the entrepreneur using the Ubu. So if there are investors or speculators taking a punt on the cryptocurrency token, that assigns a fiat value to the actual token, and that assigns a fiat value then to the Ubu by extension. So you then can kind of complete the loop, and you've got the vendor and the entrepreneur who then can interface with the investor or the speculator through the UBX token as well, because the vendors accumulate large amounts of Ubus. By selling the goods and services, they can then convert those to UBXs and sell them for fiat if need be, because they've got bills to pay in the real world in fiat, or they can buy other goods and services when more vendors start using Ubus. So it's key to understand how the UBX and the Ubu token function within the realm of the different stakeholders. Okay, so just some stats on what we've been doing. So since August, when we launched our commercial offering, we have reached now a citizen count of about 75,000 citizens and a vendor count of close to 500. So the ecosystem is growing quite quickly. We are managing to scale quite quickly. And a lot of that has been driven by some of the unique products that have been for sale on the platform, and namely those have been airtime and data. We've seen that that's a massive pain point for our citizens on the app. And this is working exactly as it's meant to work, in that things like airtime and data are key to actually getting ahead in life. You know, if you can afford to make the phone call or send the text to an employer to apply for a job, you know, you can get ahead in life. So the Ubu token that's issued to them for free allows them to actually buy something of value, being airtime, which then allows them to, you know, provide for their family. So we've seen this has been it's taken off massively in the townships in South Africa. And we've just been kind of fishbowling this in South Africa. It is open to the rest of the world, but obviously most of our citizen growth is in South Africa itself. So yeah, it's been quite successful thus far. We're quite proud of our results. And then I'm just going to go through a case study with you guys that we did in the Langa Township. So what we kind of set this little ecosystem up where we put some producers in the city in contact with Kaya Langa, and Kaya Langa is a township vendor. And what these guys in the city are doing is they're funneling things like coffee, bread, snacks, things like that are about to go off or can't be sold in the conventional shops for full price anymore. They go to Kaya Langa, the vendor in the township. And then citizens in Langa have their Ubus, they come into Kaya Langa and they are able to buy themselves a sandwich, a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, and actually, provide a meal for themselves. And these are kids who, are going to school, and often they live on like one meal a day. So this is a bit of a game changer for them, because they can now go and buy themselves a meal. And then these kids got really clever, and this is something we didn't really expect, but they then went around the neighborhood and they were saying to people in the neighborhood, can I mow your lawn? Can I wash your car? And the people in the neighborhood are saying, I don't have money to pay you to wash my car or mow my lawn. And they were saying, it's fine. Just download this Uber app. You're going to get 1,000 Ubers when you join, or 500 Ubers when you join. I'm going to get 1,000, and then you pay me those 500 Ubers. I'll work for Ubers. And then you're going to get 100 a day, and I'll come into odd jobs, and you just pay me in your Ubers. So the people are like, okay, well, that's fine. It doesn't cost me anything. Let me pay these kids in Ubers. Then the kids can go back to the shop at Kaya Langa and buy themselves 3 meals a day. So it makes a tangible change in their lives. So this is really exciting to see how this works, and it's exactly how we would have planned for it to work, but it's great to see it in real life, actually. So that was very cool. And obviously it's improving the lives of the kids in Langa. So great success, in the words of Borat. Right, so just some details on our listing. So our UBX token, the UBX token, is going to be available for sale on the 29th of March in South Africa. So we're going to list at a price of $15. And then you can see on the chart on the bottom right there, that's kind of our prediction of increases in the UBX price. And this is a model, and this is dependent on a thing called network economics. So network economics is kind of premised on what's called Metcalfe's law. And he says that the value of a network is proportional to the square of this amount of users in it. So let's take Facebook, for example. They determine the valuation of Facebook based on how many users they have. And they found that this holds up very closely to Metcalfe's law. So this is kind of how we've modeled ours. So as our network grows and we have more citizens, the value of the UBX should grow as a square of that. So once again, this is a model. Don't expect it to go up in a straight line like this. But we've got some rough estimations of where we imagine price to be. And those numbers on the x-axis are months. So as you can see there, 25 months, we're looking at about $40. So yeah, this is our model, and it's based on some solid data, which is Metcalfe's law, and things like Facebook and Tencent and WhatsApp have all followed that similar curve. Then importantly for nodes, if you want to earn UBXs before it goes on pre-sale, or before the token goes for sale, you can actually just refer people as a node, and you earn 1 UBX per direct referral and 0.2 for indirect referrals. So if someone you referred refers someone else, and you get 0.2. So it's a nice way to earn UBXs before the sale, actually. So we've had a few nodes in the township areas of South Africa going wild. They've accumulated like 5,000 UBXs already, which is a massive, tangible change for them. At a listing price of $15, these guys can actually afford to, make some real changes in their life, which is very cool for us. Okay, so how do you get involved? First off, you register as a citizen. If you've got an iPhone, just scan that barcode you can see there. If you've got an Android phone, open your barcode scanning app and scan that, and it'll take you directly to the app. Otherwise, just go to ubu.app on your web browser, and then you can put in that referral code over there, that number. If you do that, you'll earn extra Ubers. You'll get 500 Ubers instead of 100. Second point, if you want to register as a vendor, go to vendor.ubu.app, and then you can register as a vendor, and it's free. You can advertise your goods and services on there. And the third one is if you want to become a node, just pop me an email. My email address is down there, and we'll set you up with becoming a node. Okay, guys, thank you very much. If you want to track us down on social media, we're on Facebook. Just search for Ubu on Facebook. Ubu on YouTube, we've got some videos up there. Ubu on SoundCloud, we've got a couple of interviews up there if you want some more audio. We're not on Twitter, so don't look for us there. And you can also search for our Telegram channel. It's just called Ubu. Guys, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Ricki. That was an incredible presentation. Don't want to take too much airtime. Before we get to the actual questions, which I've been keeping track of, I'll read at a later stage. Again, around comprehension. Does anybody have questions about citizens, Ubu X's, fiats? Just making sure you all understood. I will then kick off with some questions for Abe and then the questions for Ricki. Cool. So Moses, well, we'll start with Stephen Riley. He asks, how will you manage energy storage in the grid to manage cloudy and dark days? That one is for Abe.
Yeah, our systems don't need to have storage in place because the majority of the time they're actually still connected to the grid. So the grid actually works as the battery. So if there's a shortfall in energy supply from the solar panels, the person connected to the solar panels still gets electricity from the grid. So you don't actually need a battery. We can install batteries retrospectively, which means that we can get people to become immune to load shedding. So we can have people having sort of emergency backup on battery for a few hours at a time. But really, there's no need to have people completely off grid with batteries. You may as well use the grid if it's there. Now, with our microgrids, there is a big battery bank with them because they're completely off-grid rural electrification systems. And in those instances, it is all battery powered, and it just all the energy goes into the battery and is just extracted from there when it's not sunny.
Thanks, Abe. And then Moses says, wow, so Sun Exchange is also an investment opportunity that can be used for financial inclusion?
Yeah, we've deliberately reduced the cost of ownership of solar panels to below 100 Rand, which makes it possible for people that previously the idea of owning a solar was something that was completely inconceivable. I mean, today, having a solar-powered house is like the ultimate upper middle class aspiration. But for people who actually need lower energy the most and need a source of reliable income the most, i.e. people on the lower end of the economic spectrum, can now own a solar panel and be doing good for the world at the same time, as well as getting a reliable return from it.
Thanks, Abe. And then a sweet note from Reed. She says, please tell me that was recorded. I would like to share it. So many emotions. That was your quote at the end. So thanks, Abe.
I can see the recording light flashing, so hopefully
it's recorded. I will share it after. And then another note from Fundu. He asks, when you lease the solar cells, how do you make a return on investment if you provide it to schools and medical fields?
So they're actually paying for using the solar cells. So you as the solar cell owner, you buy it from the sunexchange.com, you lease it to the project, and our software collects payment from that school that's paying to use the whole solar power plant, not just your solar cells, but all our customers' solar cells being leased to that project. So as far as the end user, the school is concerned, for example, they're just paying one energy bill, but it's at a lower price than they would otherwise be paying for energy to their utility, such as Eskom. So we cut the cost for them, but they're still paying for it. But that money goes to the owners of the solar cells.
Thanks, Abe. Let me just go to some questions for Ricki. So, Ricki, a question from Gino. He asks, can UBEX be traded on a crypto exchange?
Okay, so we are listing on the UBX on the 29th. So as of the 29th, yes, you'll be able to trade it on a crypto exchange, and that'll be a local exchange. We haven't announced which one yet because we're in discussions with a few of them. And then a month later, we'll be on a decentralized exchange, which means you'll be able to trade it for global citizens. It'll be a lot easier. So yes.
Okay, brilliant. And another question from Gino. I know that you've mentioned it in your presentation, but for anyone who may have missed it, he asks, how does Ubu, the company, make money?
Okay, so yeah, in that monetization slide, it's going to be probably at least 5 years before we start making money, and that's going to be on charging vendors for advertising space, basically, because we perceive that there'll be a large amount of vendors by that point, and then they can have like a bidding process to get access to citizens, amongst other things. Yeah, yes, that'll be the primary.
Cool, thanks, Ricki. And then a question from Paul. How do you prevent fraud on the Ubu tokens? Example, products and services paid for but not received.
Yeah, so this has been a bit of an issue we've been dealing with over the last couple of months, is that people will put up a physical product for sale, and then someone will buy it and they're in a different province or a different country, and then they're like, well, how do I receive this? So we're bringing in a rating system of vendors, so vendors will get rated. So it'll be like Uber, you'll have a star-based system, and you'll be able to see how many transactions they've made in the past, and a rating system. So if you have dodgy vendors, they'll very quickly be weeded out, and they won't be able to sell products and services anymore. We're then also building in a suite of back-end tools where people will be able to automate some processes if you're a vendor. But for now, we use a suite of tools called Zapier, and you can automate a whole bunch of things on the back end. And I perceive that there'll be a role for a vendor to pop up who sells automation in Ubus. So for example, I sell Zaps on Ubu. You're a vendor and you say, hey, okay, cool, please automate my business for me so that, you know, I can buy a deal and SMS gets sent out with a Google form link in it where you can put in your shipping details, etc. So that'll be quite interesting for that to develop.
Okay, thanks, Ricki. And then we've got a question from Chopsticks. How do I receive dividends over time if I hold UbuX?
Okay, so if you hold UbuX, your dividends are paid in Ubu tokens. So your UbuX wallet you'll link your Ubu wallet to UbuX wallet, and your Ubus will appear in your citizen wallet on a monthly basis.
Gotcha. Thanks, Ricki. And then another question from Gino. What is the conversion rate from Ubu to UbuX or UBEX?
Okay. So there's going to be a auction model, which is basically you put in it's very similar to the US Treasury auction model, any sovereign bond auction model, where you put in a blind bid. You can't see what other people's bids are. They can't see what your bid is. And let's say you put in a bid of, let's say 1,000 Ubers for a UBX. And everyone puts in their bid. Some of them go up to, let's say 10,000 and some down to 500. We then take the volume weighted average of those bids. So let's say the average falls on 950 Ubers per UBX. We then fill the orders closest to 950, both up and down, until we've reached 50% of all of the orders. And then the auction closes down. So only 50% of the bids will get filled, but it's going to be closest to the average. So that it keeps the system fair. So it keeps like high end and low end speculators out of the game.
Thanks, Ricki. And then another one from Fundo. As a country that is very resistant to change, some foundations will be difficult to overcome. How will Uber overcome those ideals and become successful? And Mfundo, if you want to add to that question, feel free to do that now. Or Ricki, you can just answer.
Mfundo, if you want to type in some more of that question, because that's quite open-ended. I do agree with them. South Africa is, as a country, are very conservative and quite resistant to change. But goes back to that quote that Abe brought up earlier. Like, you need to build a new system instead of complaining about the old one. A new system has to work. So in South Africa, people are stuck in this poverty trap and they're not getting help from anyone really to lift them out of it. So if we can provide a value system that the barrier to entry is very low, all you need is a smartphone, and you're getting free money that you can buy airtime or data, I think that people are going to grab that opportunity with both hands. We've seen that, and that's why our growth has been quite good so far. And we've had a lot of tech scaling issues because it's kind of broken us. Upgrade. Can anyone still hear me? It seems to have frozen.
I can hear you now.
It seems to have frozen. Sorry, I think I lost you guys for a bit there.
That's cool. I think we'll go over to the next question, but if Mfundo, if you feel like you haven't received the answer to your question again, feel free to jump in anytime. A question from Red. Why monetize? Why not an organic growth that is self-run, self-regulated? Should coins you own not be enough? Why cash flow to a person or PTY?
Okay, so the company's got bills to pay, right? And we can't run on investor money forever. The investors are taking a risk. They need to be compensated for that risk, especially when the time horizon is quite long. So the investors have typically held quite a large amount of UBX initially, and this is why we need to build value in the UBX so that investors can get their money back, and because they're funding the process upfront. I don't quite know if that explains the question or answers the question correctly, but yeah, this is why we need to drive value into the UBX and the Ubu, aside from making the entire ecosystem works out for the investors.
Thanks, Ricki. Again, Zed, if you feel like you'd like to hear more from Ricki, he shared his social media platforms, so get in touch. Gino, can a user be both citizen and vendor?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you can be citizen, vendor, and node. So you can be all three if you want to.
Thanks, Ricki. And then just some love from Chopsticks, who is representing Langa as well. So I'm quite proud there. And then Stefan, which SA and global exchange are you listing on?
So we can't disclose that at this point in time, just because we're in negotiations with a few of them. So we don't upset the apple cart there. We will have an answer within the next few days, though.
Okay. And then from Loja, she asked, you mentioned web browser. Is there a mobile app?
We do have a mobile app. The reason why we go for web browser is that the biggest pain point we've seen for the LSMs that have really been using the app a lot is data and airtime. So for them to download an app, it's quite a barrier to entry, especially if the app's like 50 megabytes or whatever. Like, these people don't have Wi-Fi at home typically. it's quite a cost. So we opted to rather go the web app route just because it lowers the barrier to entry. So our web app really is where most of our development happens. It's probably better than, we do have an app on the Google Play Store, but our web app is actually better. So I'll just use that.
Thanks, Ricki. And then Stefan Jiley asks, could I get a copy of this presentation afterwards? This was fascinating. Absolutely. Thanks. Absolutely. Both the presentations as well as the recording will be made available to you. And then also for Mark, please share the last slide of contact info from Ricki. Yeah, you'll get the recording and that will be on there as well. Abe, thanks for chatting with Stefan regarding the solar question. And then I see Ben's popped in some information there. Thank you. Stefan, again, this is for Abe, but at a grid level, we can't store GW of electricity, still a role for baseload then, whether it is PV, nuclear, gas.
Yeah, no, that's, I think I tried replying to that. No, it's entirely possible. We can have gigawatt scale storage. We just don't at the moment. Anything's possible. The point with distributed solar power plants is that you're supplying solar energy at the point of production, at the point of use, and it's there you put your battery and locate it. So you'd have distributed battery systems. I mean, worldwide there's 300 gigawatts of solar panels laid around the place. There's 300 gigawatts of solar PV capacity installed in 10 years. So yeah, give another 10 years, it's more than achievable that we've got hundreds of gigawatts of storage, which does then eliminate the need for gas power on a base load.
Thanks, Abe. And then just a question from Jason. He asks, how many UbuX are held in the core account for Ricki?
Okay, so I would have to look at the exact numbers at the moment. I'm not quite sure. But of the 240 million Ubus that will be created, UbuX is only released algorithmically through our multi-sig wallet in accordance to how many citizens are on the app. So there's not a huge amount of UbuXs floating around in our accounts at all. Like it's those get released, and of a proportion, about 10% of the UbuXs that get released come back to UbuCore. So for every, roughly that's the number. So we don't have a bunch of UbuXs actually in our account right now. And that's exactly why we've done it on a blockchain. We've done it algorithmically so that it's provably fair from the get-go.
Thanks, Ricki. And then from Gino, can I buy solar panels from Sun Exchange with Ubus?
Yeah, Abe, we're going to have to talk about that.
Great collaboration there.
Not yet. Watch this space.
Amazing. Yeah. And then Eugene, just a gentle comment. Thank you, guys. Awesome knowledge bomb. Thanks, Eugene. And then Chopsticks, the way how vendor price is controlled, majority of citizens end up not buying a thing because of high price goods and services as we receive 100 Ubus per day. That's a loaded question or statement. Ricki, did you get that?
Yeah. So I think that's probably with reference to airtime prices that have increased quite a lot recently. So let me explain how this works. So we still have one provider of airtime on the platform. And because the UbuX hasn't been available for sale yet, and that's because of a whole bunch of legal ramifications that have come up with listing as a security. It's not 2017 where you can just list it, you can just ICO a token anymore. It's taken millions of rands of legal work to get us here. So anyway, this ties back to the airtime provider. There's been one airtime provider, and he's been taking a speculative punt on Ubu. So he's been funding all of this out of pocket and accumulating Ubus, and he's basically just been selling airtime for Ubus with no means to cash it out because he can't convert Ubus to UbuX to fiat, right? So as soon as we list, there's going to be the ability for micro vendors to come on and sell airtime. Let's say they put 500 rands worth of airtime up for sale. And then there's going to be competition in the marketplace, and that's going to bring the price of airtime down because you've got a free market now. So I would perceive that airtime and data is going to be the market where we can see a huge amount of competition, because the biggest cost in airtime is distribution. If you're buying a voucher from a spaza shop, let's say you're buying a 2 rand airtime voucher, the distribution cost of that is huge because it's paper, it's printed on, it's wrapped up in plastic, it has to be shipped from wherever it's made to the vendor. So that's quite expensive. Of that 2 rand that you're buying, how much is actually a distribution cost? But if you're just buying codes for airtime, online and you're distributing them online, distribution costs are essentially nothing, right? So this means that the smaller guys can compete with the bigger guys in a much more even playing field because they can distribute via the Uber network. So I would imagine that as soon as UBX lists, micro vendors are going to pop up because they can cash out on a daily basis and buy more stock for the next day. So airtime prices at Ubers are definitely going to come down for sure.
Thanks, Ricki. And then Mfundo, he asks, Fed Group has a similar model for solar panels. They call it impact farming, but they're traditional banking or investment company. Each panel is 4,000 rands. You get a monthly income from it. How is the Sun Exchange on that return using blockchain? Please help me understand. I love the idea. Abe, that one's for you.
Yeah, so as they're a traditional banking investment company, they only work in ZAR, which basically excludes the rest of the world from using their platform. By using cryptocurrency, we can basically create frictionless cross-border payments from essentially the same product and onto a much smaller unit cost. So our solar cells start around, well, in fact, the lowest would be about 55 Rand per cell. And that return is still paid tied to the Rand. So the monthly income will still be equivalent per unit. But just because we use cryptocurrency as the medium of exchange, we transact with the whole world, not just South Africans. So allow people in any country to own solar panels in this country.
Thanks, Abe. And then another question from Gino. Is Sun Exchange and Ubu company a Section J12 company?
We are not, but we do have investors in our projects that are.
Yeah, no, we aren't either. We actually registered in Switzerland, where Uber is registered, and no, we just incorporated a private company.
Thanks, Ricki. Mfundo says, my apologies, I'm new in the space, so please have patience with my line of questioning. Not a problem at all. We invite any questions. All questions are welcome. Nolwazi, is there an age restriction to join Project Ubu? Because I refer anyone with, sorry, I just lost the question, with cell phone, but I brief them and give them white paper to understand more. Ricki, that one's for you. Or you may use the email address, yeah.
Yeah, so there's no age restriction. As long as you got a cell phone number, then you can receive it. So a lot of the issues that face universal basic income has come down to distribution, right? So like, how is the income distributed? Is it being sent to the family unit? Is it being sent to, like, the parents are going to the child? Where's it going to? So we've just opted to send it to the smallest unit, which is the cell phone number. And then, people can figure it out for themselves.
And I'll just add that on Sun Exchange, there's no age limit on owning a solar cell. And we've got kids as young as 8 at schools that their parents have bought them a solar cell on their behalf and have now owned a solar panel, paying their own education, and they'll get paid from that solar panel for 20 years. So we think that's really quite a profound shift to perception on a child and their relationship with energy and income.
Yeah, I think it's great how you guys are kind of empowering kids to learn about investment from such a young age, and about solar power and how the whole decentralized system works. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Second that. And then, Mark just says, thank you all. You're so welcome. Fundo, guys, is it possible to use blockchain tech on anything, example, medical, etc.? Can blockchain be blended with other technologies? Kevin, would you like to elaborate on the molecule protocol to give some insight?
Sorry, Nicole, can you please repeat that?
So just a question from Fundo. He asks, guys, is it possible to use blockchain tech on anything, example, medical, etc.? Can blockchain be blended with any other technologies? So I thought it would be interesting for you to share some insight on what we're doing in pharma.
Sure. So we're actually working on a product called the Molecule Protocol, which has got its headquarters based here in Basel, Switzerland. And the Molecule Protocol is basically a system that works with decentralized IP and patent ownership for chemical compounds. So we're taking the drug development process and using blockchain to kind of open source that IP process. So I could go into that a little bit more, and maybe I'd actually like to touch base on it in another call. I'll tell you guys a little bit more about what we're doing in blockchain and pharma in another call, because it's quite a large one. But yeah, so basically there is a lot of things that you can do in blockchain and pharma. There's also a number of projects that I know working with identity and healthcare records on the blockchain, also supply chain type work as well. So.
Thanks, Devin. Yeah, I think a call explaining molecule, shedding light on it will be so useful. And then, Gino, can you have portfolios of Ubus just like financial institutions have portfolios of trust units? That's one's for you, Ricki. Let me know if I did that fast as well.
Yeah, so you can have a portfolio of UBX tokens, because you wouldn't want to have a portfolio of Ubus, because Ubus dissipates on a daily basis. So let's put it into perspective. So like if you start with 0, you get 100 tokens. Day 1, you lose 1, you have 99 tokens. Next day, you get another 100. Now you lose another 1%, you lose 2 or 1.9. This carries on until you get to about 10,000, where you get 100 and you lose 100. So it'll stabilize at 10,000. Now you're not limited to 10,000. Let's say someone sends you 100,000 Ubus. You can have them in your Uber wallet, but you're going to lose 1%. So you lose 1,000 a day. So what you want to do, this is why the UBX conversion model exists. So you can actually then convert your Ubus into a UBX, which is your store of value, and then you earn dividends on that. So you can build yourself an income generating portfolio. It's quite hard to conceptualize early on, but imagine in 10 years time where the network's got millions of users and lots of vendors all over the place, and you can earn an income and actually use those Ubu tokens to spend on the ecosystem. And also, what's important is that if you keep it in system like that, you're not triggering a taxable event. Because if you're earning dividends from your stock portfolio, you're paying, in South Africa, you're paying 20% dividend tax on that. So because you're going from your UBX token to Ubu, which is the native token of the ecosystem, currently it's not subject to taxes. So you're already earning an extra 20% there. So it all comes down to utility. If there's a lot of utility in the network, then great. Take your dividends paid in Ubus and spend them on the network. Otherwise, you can also cash out your UBXs and into Bitcoin or into Ethereum or into fiat, whatever you want to do. So the aim is to give people as much freedom as possible.
Thanks, Ricki. And then a comment from Nicholas Global E-commerce, just to say, insightful use cases, good talk. Until next time. And then thanks, Ben, for sharing the link to Molecule for Mfundo to learn more about. Yeah, that's all of the questions that are in the chat box. If you have any more questions, we'll be happy to answer them offline. But yeah, if there are any more questions for now, feel free to ask. That was really exciting. So thank you again, Abe and Ricki, and everyone else who participated. So informative. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Nicole.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ed.